Good evening and welcome once again to COVID Conversations with me, Carvin, Goldstone. It's been an interesting week. For those of you who are parents, and there's many of you out there with children in school, today was an interesting day because for the first time you heard the plan of how children are going to go back to school. And if you were listening the way I was, you're probably very confused. You're not exactly sure if this is going to work and how it's all going to play out. So I'm not going to attempt to explain it to you because at this point, I think it's a proposal that I too am not sure. All I heard was an plan that was over the whole course of the year, which meant that they didn't go to school that much. And the question I left that with was, do I still need to pay school fees? Now, I know some of you out there are saying, yes, you do need to pay school fees, Carvin, because the teachers need to be paid. But I'm going to make an argument here. So I have a daughter who's 4 and is in preschool. Now, does she need to go to school for the rest of the year? Will she fail grade 1 if she doesn't go? I'm not sure. Can I save money on preschool? Something that we all have to consider with money being so tight. The problem there, though, is that I paid the school fees in advance. So now I'm actually wanting her to go to school just to get my money out of it. On the other hand, I have a son who goes to boarding school. And that one, I'm really asking, do I need to pay school fees? Because part of those school fees is for the food and the sleeping. And if he's eating at home and he's sleeping at home, then I want a small reduction. But that's a conversation for another time. It's been quite interesting this week because we heard from the government speaking at different points, different departments, giving us an outline of what the way forward is for South Africa. One of the issues that we've all been wondering about is when people get into hospital, can our hospitals cope with them? Now, Jackson Mthembu had something to say this week about our efforts to get ventilators, and Gino Fernandez has this report for us.
Hello, South Africa. So we've got a new Minister of Pleasures, Jackson Mthembu, who meant to say ventilators, but instead he said something else. So could you imagine the scenario if he had meant to say what he actually said?
Personal protective equipment that we are rolling out for all our hospitals, including issues of vibrators.
What?
Vibrators.
What?
Now, if you're confused why he confused the two words, vibrators and ventilators, it's because there's some part of your brain that whatever's on your mind, you kind of say sometimes, and it's the wrong thing. None of us say ventilators. It's not part of our everyday vocabulary. But there he was telling us about vibrators. Now, he's obviously rejected the statement because he realized that South Africa won't let you go. If the president can't get away with putting a mask on, a minister who says vibrators will be available to everyone who's in hospital definitely will not get away with that. Now, in your community, everyone responded to that differently. As a regular feature on this show, here is Gilly Apter with what they're saying in the suburbs.
This is Gilly Apter reporting live once again from the suburbs.
Cher, Yara, I'm a little bit worried about Gare. He is like absolutely finished for these markets.
My whole life they told me diversification. Oh, you want to talk about diversification? Fine, let's talk about it. Sasol, gas.
But won't everything just go back to normal like in a month?
Telecoms, MTN.
That's what I told him.
Banking, Capitec. It's a bloodbath.
Rams, maybe he should try some meditation. There's a brilliant app.
Retail, Idcon, not even paying their suppliers. Let's not even talk about the share price.
I know, I've been doing it with the yoga every day and it's really helping.
All right, babe, it's time to make some decisions.
I've already dropped the Botox to 0. You can't even get it delivered.
What do you like more, your car or medical aid?
Maybe we should just stop paying the bond. They can't kick us out.
Who's paying the bond? No one's paying the bond.
I'm actually paying my bond. No one likes a show off, Sherry.
That is what the whites are saying, folks. This is Gilly Apter signing out from the suburbs. This is a developing story.
Yes, the suburbs is a special place. I think walking the dog is still a big issue out here. I do live in a suburb, fortunately or unfortunately, and we're hoping that everything goes back to normal, or else I'll be back in Newlands East very soon. Now, quite interesting. Most of us that are at home are not sure what to do with ourselves. A lot of us are watching Tiger King again. I watched Wild Wild Country, which is a very interesting piece on Netflix. Some of you are watching movies, there's some really bad ones like Coffee and Kareem. But some of us have decided to take up a few hobbies. And one of my friends, a comedian from Cape Town, decided that he'd use his time to write a poem about lockdown. Here is Dalen Oliver with his lockdown poem.
Corona, Corona, who would have thought we'd spend more than a month at home? No buying alcohol and cigarettes, a law that many have fought. Can we run, walk our dogs? Where and when can groceries be bought? We'll stand firm as a nation, snitch on the rule breakers, then share social media posts while watching them get caught. Zoom sessions, WhatsApp video calls, live chats, the order of the day, especially for work colleagues, families and friends, and those separated from bay. There's no school like homeschool is what parents now have to say, and we can't see each other like we used to. Social distancing, isolation, the new normal. Yay. President Cyril Ramaphosa, you've been a great leader thus far, but you're always running late for your speeches. Are you playing hide and seek or taking phone calls in your car? We've given our best as a country, and we have so many questions to ask. But for now, we'll wait until your next address, where hopefully you've learned how to put on a mask.
Well, there you have it. You can also write your poem. If you submit it and it's any good, I promise I will play it on the show. If you got a poem, a rap, whatever it is, if it's about the lockdown, send it to me. I'll make sure it gets aired and that 500 people see it over the course of a week. Actually, we're doing much better than that. So anyway, moving on. It's been quite interesting for South Africans who are living overseas. Myself, I have family that lives in the UK. My parents do. And their experience in lockdown has been quite different to ours. Will they come home? Some have been able to come home, but some people are stranded around the world. Now, the first place to have the outbreak of COVID-19, as many of us know, was Wuhan in China. And Wuhan, of course, was the epicenter of the outbreak, which meant that people that lived in Wuhan at the time were the first to experience a lockdown. Most of us had never heard of this idea of a lockdown, being locked up in your house, not being able to go out, having to wear a mask. These were all new ideas. And many of us watched what was unfolding in Wuhan, almost as if it was a movie, and yet it was real. And there's someone who was living through this experience. Roxanne Rollins, a Durban native, was living and working in China in Wuhan when COVID-19 broke out. And she's been in lockdown for more than most of us can even imagine. I think it's over 90 days in total. And she's joining me right now. Hello, Roxanne. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks, Carvin. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Nice to see you. Are you home, safe with your family?
Yes, enjoying my time with my parents.
Okay, before we chat to Roxanne, I want to play a video of Roxanne. This is her last day in Wuhan as she's leaving. And this is where we were, almost a month ago.
I'm finally packed and ready to go. I just, as you can imagine, it's just been such an emotional morning, and honestly, I'm so grateful that Yuri was here. I don't think I would have been able to do it without him. So, you know, God has just been faithful through this whole experience and sending the right person at the right time, and also just making sure that I'm in the right place when the lockdown was announced. So, oh, yes. So at this stage, I don't know if I'll be coming back to China. For now, I'm just looking forward to going home. It's really been a rough situation. I'm about to leave for the airport. We had to receive lots of documents this week, and now finally we've just received a letter giving us a permit to drive me to the airport, which is about 2 hours away. There's going to be roadblocks and that sort of thing, so we needed to make sure that we have the right documentation to be allowed to get to the airport. It is now 12:50 p.m. in China on the 13th of March, Friday, and I should be flying out at 9 p.m. and will hopefully then arrive in South Africa safe and sound tomorrow morning. The flight time is about 17 hours, so it's a super long flight, but yeah, feeling ready and packed. I've got everything that I need, and just looking forward to finally getting home.
Ooh, I think that I found myself a cheerleader. She's always right there when I need her. Ooh, I think that I found myself a cheerleader. She's always right there when I need her. Our goodbye song.
For my darling leaving me behind, and she even didn't cry. You see, she's happy to leave me here in Wuhan. Even she said that on a video. Okay.
I'm not happy. I'm just happy to go home.
Yeah, without me.
Sad you can't come. Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Be
Okay.
safe. Do not get the virus. Try and leave as soon as possible. And I will see you on the other side.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. And try don't cough there at the airport.
So Roxanne, what we've just played there is a very emotional farewell for you from Wuhan. Can you take us back to that moment? You were in Wuhan and you weren't sure if you were going to be able to come home. What were you feeling in that moment, not knowing whether you'd be able to come back to South Africa?
It's really just mixed emotions. And I think that was definitely the most emotional day of them all, right until at least 2 weeks before. The information that we were receiving was that we were not going to leave. So there were two emotions that I was feeling that day. One was just excited that I get to leave and go home, but also the other side of it was that my fiance actually missed his evacuation to stay with me. So at that point, there's kind of like that middle feeling, one side being excited to leave, but also understanding that you're leaving behind someone who stayed when they had the same opportunity. So really definitely emotional, bittersweet. Looking forward to saying hello to the family, but also a very serious goodbye.
You just entered into a engagement. You just been proposed to. It wasn't long after that you'd been engaged to your boyfriend Yuri that this all started to unfold. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, the lockdown literally started within 3 weeks of our engagement. So at that point, we were on vacation. And also had the opportunity, started calling friends and family and talking about where our wedding would be, what it will look like. Obviously, at the time, we were also aware of the virus. At that time, it didn't have a name. I found out about it actually on New Year's Eve. But really, until the lockdown, I think that we didn't understand how serious it was. So in all honesty, I would say we just kind of continued living our regular life. The other thing is that at that point, everyone is preparing for Chinese New Year, so people are on vacation. There's lots of travel happening. We're going out with friends. So really, it was just, for me, until the day the lockdown started, I was just celebrating something exciting that had just happened. Yeah.
So you found out about it on the 31st of December, 2019. That's the first time you heard about it. And how did you find out?
Yes, and I was in Wuhan. I think the difficult part, I mean, when you're in a country where everyone speaks your language, you are privy to the news. Even if you don't watch the news, you see it all over social media. The problem with being in a country where you don't understand the language is you kind of relying on social media mainly, and that's then obviously if the people that you are friends with have access to that information. We were literally planning, I mean, it's New Year's Eve, we were literally planning our night out, and Yuri actually sent a message to the group saying, should we still go on the ship cruise, because I see that at that time we were calling it pneumonia. So they said there's an outbreak of pneumonia. And honestly, when I read the message, I was thinking, that's crazy. Pneumonia. We're definitely going,
Yeah.
So I think there wasn't enough information that was being given to us at the time. Maybe a lot more of the Chinese people knew or foreigners that understood Chinese, but I definitely didn't have any more information than that at that point in time.
Okay. Most of what we know about the lockdown in Wuhan, we've learned from like news clips. But as someone who lived through it, what was it like and how did it differ from what you're experiencing here in South Africa?
Okay, I will say two things. In one way, it's really different, but in other ways, it's quite similar to what a lot of people are experiencing in South Africa in terms of the food struggle. I will say initially in Wuhan, it was fine. It was kind of the same rules as we have now. Like there was no public transport though at all. And we could go to the stores and purchase goods. But we were in lockdown for 51 days to the day that I left. So initially we had that freedom of movement, obviously no takeaways and that sort of thing, but we were able to go to the Walmart and get whatever we needed. But about 3 weeks before I left, they changed the rules and then it was getting more difficult to get food. Now, for everyone, that experience was different. So I cannot speak for everyone in Wuhan, but I will say sort of three groups. The one group would be those that are living in maybe a big apartment building. So they were not allowed to leave at all. The building manager would have a permit and he would purchase on behalf of everyone, and they would purchase whatever they need from the building manager. Okay, then there would maybe be students at the university where food would be catered to them. Maybe not food that they would have wanted, but they were given meals, you know. And then we had that option, which was kind of in the middle of nowhere. We were actually staying at Yuri's school during the lockdown. It was just the two of us and security guards. And when we found out we needed a permit, we walked around trying to see who has the permit, and nobody seemed to know. So that was when it got difficult, the stress of getting food. So maybe here it's been like people maybe are struggling with the finances. We had the money to buy food, but it was becoming difficult to actually go and do that.
Wow, that's really, I didn't know that it was that difficult to even get out of your building, that you had to have a permit. In many ways, we have a lot more liberties, especially people who live in suburbs and those sort of who have cars. They're never restricted really from going to the shop.
Absolutely. And I mean, for us, what I would say is that initially, obviously, there's no public transport. We don't have cars in China. For this particular instance, we were using the vehicle from the school. But I mean, most foreigners would not have cars, and it's not all the stores that are open. They're just small stores in your area. So sometimes people are walking way further to get the food that they need. So in some ways, I will say it's very similar to what a large population of South Africa is actually going through currently. That was sort of the feeling, the frustration of the food, the fear. We also had that situation where we were not sure. The border was closed around Wuhan, so we were trying to find out if food would be replenished. So it was really extremely stressful. I would say in that regard, it's very different to what I'm experiencing now. Obviously, being at home at my parents' house, that thought doesn't even really cross my mind. You know, what are we going to eat? And then I saw the truck's been looted. Now, I know you guys discussed this last week. So there's two, yes, there's obviously a criminal element, and hopefully there's a small percentage that really are there because they are really hungry. And in those last 2 weeks of being there, we were checking our neighbors' doors, you know, and then messaged friends and said, guys, your doors are open. We're going to be going inside and taking what we can because this is actually the situation here. So I think when you have an experience like that, your perspective really changes a lot in terms of when people are struggling to get food on the other side. In that instance, my family can't help me. I don't need money, you know, I need food.
Yeah. So just from a psychological and from a mind point of view, you spent 51 days in lockdown in Wuhan, and then you came over to South Africa. There was a bit of stigma too around the group that came over from South Africans, saying, don't bring them here, they're going to bring the sickness here. And then you guys all went to Limpopo, where you spent another 21 days. And then from that into the South African lockdown that we're all in at the moment. And so you've spent over 90 days in lockdown, which is well over 3 months. What's that been like for you in terms of your mental stability?
Okay, yeah, today is day 91. Actually, I'm pushing to 102 days. What I will say, social media is great, but it's also important to really unplug at times. And I could see, even leading up to our evacuation, that was the worst time for me. I didn't have anyone in my circle that was saying, don't come in that. But because I had been very vocal about what's happening, sharing stuff on YouTube and on Facebook, I had lots of messages in my inbox, from strangers really on Facebook that are not in agreement with us coming back. And also, like all of the news articles you read, comments are just the worst. I think we shouldn't be allowed to have comments. You're reading these comments and people are saying, just stay there and die. And, I remember one day in particular, Yuri actually confiscated the phone from me because I was literally trying to comment and explain to people that we've been safe and that sort of thing. So I think it's definitely a very emotional experience. You can't change everybody else's mind, and honestly, when we were coming back into quarantine, just that bus ride from the airport to the resort where we were staying, it was so emotional initially because there was so much fear. We were not sure what we need to expect, what we can expect. There were lots of threats about what would be happening, but actually it was the complete opposite. We had people lining the streets welcoming us and clapping, and from jumping in that plane feeling like you're on the wrong side of your street to basically being welcome and realize this is actually the spirit of Ubuntu that we need to focus on. That was like a great experience. Going into quarantine, I wasn't too stressed. I realized that there was going to be quarantine, but obviously while I was in quarantine, that's when they made the announcement about the extension. Sorry, about the lockdown here in South Africa. So yeah, so also, I spent the time in quarantine. Actually, out of all the 51 days and my time at home, I would say the hardest time was the days that I was in quarantine. Mixed emotions, feeling like, oh, now there's this big issue. Have I made the right decision? Also, a lot of guilt about Yuri. When I left, we had made the decision because we thought that he would have another flight 2 weeks later. And it's 7 weeks later now, and he still hasn't been able to leave China. So obviously, there's a lot of emotions that you feel in that time. And also, I don't want to talk too much about this, but the test, we were tested twice in quarantine. And I promise you guys, stay at home just to avoid that test. It was truly traumatizing. So I think that was just the worst part. So being at home now, yes, I miss Yuri. I still obviously have lots of emotions around the issue, but definitely feeling like I have an opportunity to breathe. I just have to make it through each day. There's no decisions I have to make or be thinking about what I need to do for food or anything like that. So, yeah.
I read one of your posts where you said you'll celebrate, and I'm paraphrasing, when you're at home in your mother's house, eating your mother's food and sleeping in your warm bed. So when that eventually happened, when that moment came and you were now embracing, holding, hugging your parents, eating your mother's food, what did it feel like?
Oh, it was so wonderful. I arrived literally at 12:15. It was like past midnight when I arrived at my home, and my parents were popping champagne, and it was so emotional. Obviously, I can't see my entire family. It's just my parents that live here, but it was so emotional. I was joking with friends the next day and said, my mom made dinner, expecting me to be home by 8. I came after midnight, but I still ate that curry at 3 o'clock in the morning. So, I mean, it was wonderful. I think even for 2 weeks after that, still just being in that bubble, I said to people, once I get home, I'll share what happened in quarantine, but I wasn't even able to do that really initially. I just wanted to kind of live in the moment of just being home. I mean, just feeling like I've been through the most and I just want to rest, sleep in.
So obviously a big decision to make for Yuri is where does he go and how does he stay in China? Does he go to Ukraine? And then at what point, with the world being closed up, at what point do you guys get a chance to see each other. Have you guys had time to think about how that plays out?
And it's all we talk about all day. I will say, obviously, we are not in control of this situation. So we've made multiple plans over the course of the last few weeks that I've been away. The first step would be for him to try and leave China. Okay, because right now China's kind of on the ban list everywhere. So we need to get him away from any sort of country where there's a ban list. So when people are allowed to fly, that he would be welcomed wherever. So we're trying to get him to leave China. Our next date we've been given is the 14th of May, but the flights have continuously been cancelled. So we hope that it would be the 14th of May. So he'll go to Ukraine for a while until our borders open. So yeah, I was understanding when the president gave the levels, but I also realized that it's going to be a very long time before he can actually get here. Our wedding was actually planned for the 15th of August. So also thinking through all of those things, is there a wedding? If there is, what does it look like? At this point, we kind of just wish that we were already married so that he would have been able to obviously be part of our evacuation if that was the case. So for now, to come to South Africa, spend some time here, and then when the world calms down, be it January or February, we'll make a decision then about where we'll work or where we'll move to.
Okay. Thank you so much, Roxanne. We wish you all the best, and we wish Yuri the best. And thank you for sharing your story with us. And we know that everything will come back together. Eventually, we will get back to normal, and we will talk about the wedding when it comes up. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having
Cool.
me.
So there you have it. Thanks to Roxanne once again for joining us and sharing her story. Quite an interesting story for those of you who hung around to listen to it. And if you just tuned in right now, I suggest you go back to the beginning and just listen to this amazing story of someone who's been in lockdown for over 90 days. I know a lot of us, as we're approaching our 30 days or just over 30 days, we now at the end of our rope, we just can't take it anymore. And to have the mental strength to be in lockdown for over 90 days, a fascinating story. And that's the end of our show. But before we go, here is Vafa with South African word of the day. From me, Carvin Goldstone. Good night.
Shabuze, Vafa here. And today's South African word of the day is Gunda. Now, Gunda is a Zulu word meaning to cut your hair or to mow the lawn, which for me means exactly the same thing. Guys, I'm not okay. I'm sad. I'm emotional. I feel like my life is a movie right now. James Bond 007. Gunda another day. Too fast. Too Gunda. Those are horrible movies. Those are horrible movies. Hey, the director will probably be like, hey, Wena, Gunda, Gunda. Get it? You got it. You're fast. You're fast. Anyway, if there's any negativity in your life, I hope you Gunda it out. And when this is all done, just go and get a haircut and everything is going to be fine. Anyway, I hope that's helped. Stay tuned for more South African words of the day. Otherwise, Dinsa.